Hey, Eric.
Hello, good evening.
Good to see you.
All right. So I think you are all set.
All right.
So when you are done with this, you can just hit, because I think you're the are you still co-host?
Probably.
All right, I'll make you co-host. So I think you should have the ability to end the meeting for all.
Okay.
And then just close the laptop and everything else will shut off. Just leave it.
Okay. Just lock
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
All right. Great.
Done okay?
Good.
And
Are you leaving us, Liam?
I'm
Unattended?
gonna try to go home. That's what I'm gonna try to do.
You're not allowed to do that. Come on.
Well, not always, but I think you're in good hands. I think that we have a setup here. So just the owl, obviously a rotating camera.
Yeah.
That's the speaker and microphone, so you should be able to grab that.
All right. Great.
And you're the host, so you should be able to, if you see any attendees.
Oh, where will I see those?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so anyone who comes in and do you know how to allow them to talk?
No. But
So when they come in, you'll be able to click on them and it'll say allow to talk and.
okay.
Yep.
It'll be pretty intuitive. All right. Good deal. I'll keep an eye on that. And here we go. Eric, how many people do we need for a quorum? Do you know?
Eric, you're on mute too.
All right. Thanks a lot, Liam.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for getting us set up.
I'll go pack up. I'll check back in.
All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
How many members are on the committee, voting members?
I think there are 6, so we would need 3.
Or you need 4, I think.
We got 6.
But
Yeah,
don't quote me. I don't know that for a fact.
that would make sense. So we've got 3. So we need one more.
Yeah, but
Oh,
I don't,
Perfect. We've got a quorum, so we will get started.
She's down in the park
yeah,
there.
but guys, I'm not a voting member,
I know, but we've got
But I don't-
Michaela just.
but I don't count. I don't count towards quorum.
All right, but you count in life, Jean Marie.
Okay, I'm just showing you.
Big head on that.
We've got a quorum.
Mikhail, I'm Dick LaRue.
Hi, Dick. Nice to meet you in person,
Yeah,
finally. It's been a
finally.
while.
All right, so Eric, at 6:03, we're going to call the meeting to order. And just for the sake of everybody, we are here at the Scarborough Housing Alliance Committee meeting on June 30th, 2022. And yeah, here we go. I don't know if we'll do like a roll call just to let everybody know who's here. I'm Brian Shumway.
Dick LaRue.
Michaela Sargent.
Eric Boucher.
Jean Marie Caterina.
Great, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
That counts. And not present yet are Bill Donovan and Leroy Crockett.
He wasn't gonna make it. right?
And he wasn't gonna make it, right. So, great. So first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from May 5th of 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Great, thank you, Dick. Any discussion? Oh, great, a second?
Yep.
Great, all in favor of approving minutes? Aye, looks unanimous. Minutes are approved, terrific. Last time we were all together, we started talking about the proposal and the idea of converting lodging uses in town to affordable workforce housing. And town council has asked us to weigh in and give them some advice on things that they should think about when they're reviewing proposals to to convert housing or convert lodging uses to affordable workforce housing. We had a good discussion last time. Between that meeting and this meeting, Eric has circulated the minutes from that meeting, and then I kind of synthesized that into the beginning of a memo that eventually we'll kind of add to and kind of bulk up a little bit more and turn into final work product to send to town council. But this will be like the one item for tonight's meeting for us to talk about and to add to and or subtract from. Yeah, I'll note that Leroy sent around a link to us, I don't know if it was yesterday, with a video of, I think, the original proposal from one of, regarding one of these properties in town to do a conversion. And one of the things that was curious to me, or I didn't realize, we had kind of been talking about, or I've been hearing us talking about these proposals in terms of current property owners wanting to convert their properties to new uses. And the way that this proposal is for the Roundwood or maybe Candlewood Suites.
Yeah.
It was Candlewood Suites who had a potential buyer who wanted to set it
It
up.
was all being proposed by a buyer of a property. And so I don't know that it matters, but it was just kind of an interesting little twist from the way that we've been talking about things. So as we're talking tonight, that may inform some of the other things that we start thinking about. But it was a little bit of an aha moment to me that it's not necessarily the same people that are running these as hotels and motels that would be running them as apartment buildings. So with that, I just kind of look to the group to see where you want to take the discussion. Thoughts? Anything?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has. anything else to
I'm
add
just,
there.
I know that isn't there a problem with one of the properties down here on Route 1 by Agus? Are they using that for, for housing?
You're talking about the Comfort Inn.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're part of that. I don't know if it was ARPA funds or whatever it was for COVID period. And the owner took funds and it's good through October, if I understand correctly. But what we're asking as the council is if we have other buyers who come forward or as happened with Candlewood, can we have a policy in place that allows for a conversion to happen? That's what we're looking for. Because as you know, housing is at a premium throughout the state and particularly in Scarborough. And I know I was all for the Candlewood Suites, but as was John Clucci, but the other counselors were but I have to say that the potential buyer didn't do a very good job of lobbying. Because workforce housing, it was really placed, that one was looking at the so-called missing middle of folks who, they're commuting 40, 50 minutes to come and work at jobs in Hannaford's or the restaurants or whatever. I know the Portland Chamber of Commerce was really supportive of the potential of doing that, but we need something on the books as a council. Is why we've asked for a review by this committee as to, number one, does it make sense? And number two, what are your thoughts on it and whatever. So that's a little bit of the background.
Yes, so in reviewing some of the notes from last time, or Eric, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm sorry, Brian, point of order here. I received an email from Bill that he did not have the link. So I forwarded him my link and it appears he's showing up now as me as well.
Bill, do you know how to put your name in there?
Hi, this is Eric speaking.
So apparently I was not supposed to forward my link, but at least we have Bill. He's just under my name.
Bill,
Thanks,
could you
Eric.
please identify yourself for the public? All right.
Bill Donovan.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, everybody got the agenda, everybody got the minutes. Were there any other considerations that came to mind to add or to dive a little deeper into?
I don't have a problem with workforce housing. work within the area. I guess if they convert it to another type of housing, whatever the case, low income housing, then I think we have another issue to just, talk about.
Why
And
do you have,
so,
why do you have another issue with low income?
Well, it depends upon what the area is, I don't think I'd like to see.
I was gonna put it down at Higgins Beach.
I was gonna say Higgins Beach, I'll talk to Rob, and see if he wants it at the breakers, so, I just think, in a situation of affordable housing, you have to take into effect, the area that it's in, neighborhoods that it could be close to, all that stuff. I know South Portland has, their affordable housing and it's stretched out, unlike Portland, which their, affordable housing is situated in one area rather than Kennedy Park.
mhm,
And they've had problems with that. With
Mhm.
South Portland, there's so much work. Affordable housing is stretched out throughout the city,
yeah.
so.
So,
What we're doing here wouldn't work like South Portland, because it's basically taking these units and converting them into, affordable housing, workforce housing, so on and so forth, so.
yeah, so maybe one question related to that is, is it important for all of the units to be dedicated as some sort of regulated housing? So whether it's workforce or whether it's affordable, and if not, what's a threshold percentage to make sure that it does include? Because I think one of the things that I was feeling and hearing with the original proposal was the right to do this, or the ability to do this, is kind of a right that doesn't come for everybody. So there's kind of a public good that needs to be created
Yeah.
through this, and that public good would be creating more affordable or workforce housing. But then to your point, Dave, the question is, should it be all? Should it be half? Should it be 80%? And I think you're speaking to the issue of concentration, and over concentration, question of what the right balance is. I don't know if other folks have feelings about that or thoughts about that.
Yeah,
Experiences with that.
yeah.
And Jean Marie, just if I could just ask, I know council is asking for feedback from the Alliance. And so I want to first go to the Alliance for feedback and
Well, I wanted to give you a little bit more background.
okay, all right, we'll take the background.
We're just looking for where would it make sense to allow this, in other words, in what zones? Because we talked last time about, it doesn't make sense in the hotels down like in Pine Point or whatever, but maybe along Route 1. So, as broad as possible. And that's it. I'm going to shut up. I won't say anything more.
Thank you, Jean Marie.
So to the first question of, how, what proportion?
Right.
And then, the second question, well, we'll take the second question second, but folks have feelings about the first question?
I think last time we talked about public amenities too, like transportation and things like that. So that's gonna put you pretty much like Main Road, Route 1, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the bus route is, but I would imagine what that.
Yeah, but how about the question of like what proportion of the conversion ought to be affordable or workforce? Do you have any thoughts on
The
that?
conversion of it?
Yeah,
Don't you think that's really a question for the town council to decide at the time that they're entertaining a specific proposal of conversion?
I mean, I think it is, Bill, but I think, they're looking to us to say, we think they're looking for us to say, this is either a big enough problem that we ought to take these opportunities to create big chunks of affordable workforce housing, or it would be a waste if only 10% of the units were affordable or workforce housing, or 50% is an okay threshold, or, I think they're looking for some kind of guidance in that regard.
Well, the circumstance of each applicant who's seeking the special exception or whatever is the threshold that allows you to undertake this initiative. Every one of those is going to be distinct. And therefore, some may be better for low-income housing because it may be more accessible to services that they need, like public transportation. So that's why I'm kind of thinking it's really in their hand for us to say you need to take into account things like access to public services. That's exactly right. That is an important consideration. But for us to try and get down to a granular level of percentages, I think that's almost a fool's errand.
Bill, what if we were to tackle the question of, we think policy-wise, it's problematic to have too much of this be market rate. Yeah, we think it's, it's too much of a giveaway for 90% of this to be market rate.
Mhm.
Or we think it doesn't feel right if 80% of it's market rate or 70%. And then if the rest of it wants to be a mix between affordable and workforce, to your point, have at it. But it seems like it's right for us to wait on. There's some threshold of this pathway, this easy pathway that we're trying to help create. It only ought to be easy if people are creating the public amenity in a certain proportion. And the question is how much, what's the proportion?
So basically, you're looking at, like, in this, you have all these units, 14, 11, 5, all in one area. So do we want that to say, okay, it's all workforce housing, affordable housing, or whatever? Or do we say, okay, percentage of your rooms can be used, converted to workforce or affordable housing or low income or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, or it's like if you've got 20 unit, if you want to create 20 units of housing, no more than X units can be market rate. The rest have to be affordable or workforce.
How has that number been come up with in the past? Okay,
Well, so I mean, this,
like all I can think of is over here, like, what was it, 10%?
yeah, so 10% of the downs has to be affordable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
That's what we had in the past, just wondering why that was picked, and maybe that means something moving forward, I don't know.
Yes, I think that was probably tied to the comp plan.
Okay,
I don't know. And then, if someone was doing like a low income tax credit project, the smallest proportion of, and nobody would ever do this, but the smallest proportion of the units that they could do and still get the funding would be 20% affordable, and the rest
okay.
market rate.
Well, maybe it's as opposed to something that's arithmetic, it would be more articulated as we perceive there to be an equally compelling case for workforce housing and low-income housing. And therefore, the council in making a decision should try to be respectful and take account of both.
And maybe not favor one over the other. I mean, that's another question. Is it, or is this a pathway that ought to favor one over the other?
want to restrict yourself that much right off the bat,
I
right?
don't think Bill could probably answer this, but maybe legally you can't restrict yourself on that. You could have a lawsuit on your hands saying, well, I need workforce housing, but and I qualify, but you only have low income.
Yeah, I mean, I think so these people that own these properties don't have the right to do this conversion right now.
Right.
So they're asking for a special permission.
Mhm.
And so I think, I don't know.
You can set standards. It's okay in a special exception to set up unique standards. That's not going to cause the ordinance provision to fail. I think the council's more looking for advice on what is the Housing Alliance's sense of what the nature of the problem, the level of the problem, and if you said, well, we see it, they're both, it's very hard to distinguish one from the other. Because there is a strong need for housing in the greater Portland area. There is a strong need for low-income housing. There is a strong need for affordable housing. And it should, and when you're looking at, and usually these things are done by the Zoning Board of Adjustment, special exceptions. They'll look at all the factors, like the neighborhood, like the services. And that's the kind of guidance I think that we would be giving, the nature of the factors that you would look to determine whether this was in the public's interest.
So maybe, if maybe as a group, we're not comfortable setting a level. So maybe the response in this regard, town council is, town council, you ought to set a level and articulate that in your policy. But you ought to be thinking about, how much, what level, what minimum levels of protected workforce housing you want, or protected housing you want in these conversions, and make that part of your policy.
The original proposal that came forward was for workforce housing, which is different. And I know people misuse the terms when they say low income, affordable. I mean, the HUD terms and what we've got in our ordinance are very different. Affordable is one thing, workforce is something else. If you recall, you guys helped us come up with and approved what we have now put into ordinance as the definition for workforce housing, which I believe follows the HUD numbers, which is what, 80 to 120% of the AMI.
Yep.
So, I mean, I can see, the council could make that determination. Again, what we're more interested in, and I'm speaking for me and for John and maybe a couple others with this, is number one, does it make sense to allow this use? And if so, where would you put it? And from what I'm hearing, and which makes perfect sense from what I know about affordable and workforce housing, is, walkability, access to public transportation and services are really big, just because maybe not everyone can afford a car, or, that's where the jobs are located that folks could work in. So I would say let the council make a determination on how we would deal with percentages, but do you even think it's a good idea to do this? Because I don't know, I personally thought that conversion of Candlewood Suites was an opportunity missed, but there you go.
Yeah, I think the takeaway from the last meeting was that it seemed like a good path. And,
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of restrictions otherwise. You got the shell already. It
Yeah.
seems like a great opportunity. I think you're right on there. So.
Yeah.
I feel like most of us were on the
Yeah.
same page with that one.
yeah,
Gina Marie, what didn't the council like about the proposal?
Well, the guy who brought it forward, it sort of came out of left field, so to speak. And the timing wasn't very good because, some of the members of the council are all worried about too many people living in town, as you know. And they wanted to concentrate on the downs and they didn't want to be bothered with it, is what it amounted to. So I talked to the developer and suggested that he beef up his presentation, and he did go and hire someone to advise him on how you do things politically in towns. Because my impression of him was he's just a really nice guy, which I know is a scary thing to think about developers, but that's my own opinion. Thank you very much. But he's trying to do the right thing, and he thought this was a really good idea and it was needed in this area, and he's out of Boston area, and I can't for the life of me think of his name right now. I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. But that being said, so the opportunity was missed, but then the light bulb went off in a few of us saying, geez, this may make sense, to help with this, not only with the housing, but particularly down near Candlewood. You had extended stay hotel. You've got a lot of crime going on down there, or you did, because of the situation with, this so-called temporary housing or COVID housing that was going on that really irritated me, not because I think everyone deserves a roof over their head, because if you're going to stabilize people, you got to meet their basic needs, and that's one of them. But people were put in these hotels with no social work intervention, no whatever. So, but this would be a good, creative, forward-thinking way that if because hotels, let's face it, other than the so-called business model of hotels is going by the wayside because of like Zoom and whatever. People aren't traveling as much for business. Although Brian, I know you were traveling all the time. Maybe I'm wrong, but from people I know in the corporate world, they are saying that that's what's going on. So, it's an option for a conversion of buildings that are already pretty much set up. I mean, you've got a room and you've got a bathroom. Case Candlewood Suite, you actually had a little suite. And he was very happy to do it for the workforce. He got it. He got, the numbers would have worked for him and everything. But as it turns out, time ran out because the owner was up against some sort of a corporate trademark. I don't know what the heck it was. He had to renew the Candlewood Suites name. So time ran out. So, which is too bad. But they got us thinking. I mean, this is all, we're looking for an opportunity to do something that may make sense for some of these hotels that aren't tourist hotels, so to speak. They're more catering to the business, and why not use these buildings for good and to diversify our population and bring in people who can work. The refugee population, there's a number of populations. So that's where this all came from.
so any other thoughts or considerations that we should add to the list? Things to consider?
Brian, I thought the draft memo was actually almost there. I mean, it felt like, do we support it? And if so, we issue the memo. Do we have certain zones or areas of the town that we'd like to identify? Sure, it sounds like we do up near Roundwood area. And as I said at the last meeting, I think the market's going to dictate that. The, the units or the hotels closest to the ocean probably aren't going to convert to this
No.
anyway.
Yeah,
So
no.
it wouldn't be excluding those. So I feel like it's in decent shape. Now, I'm not sure if this is too broad or too vague or too many questions for the town council, but I think it reflects our thoughts pretty well.
I would
Thanks.
agree with you, Eric. I would agree with you.
So could we dive
do
in on
too.
on one question that, well, let's talk about one question, which is the question of, well, zones. So there's, there's a series of hotels and motels that exist in town,
Right.
and who knows, Dick, you've got the list there.
Yeah.
It's probably what, 17 or some number.
Yeah.
I think they exist in a total of 4 different zones in town.
Mhm.
And, the question is, ought we recommend that town council limit these proposals to only certain zones or leave it open to any zone that a hotel exists in? And so that's the question. I've got feelings about that, and I'm curious about other people's feelings about that.
Brian, I'll chime in first, I guess. I think to get political traction and political legs, I think if we recommended certain zones that we think are obvious, given all of our considerations like transportation and services and jobs, and recognize that certain near the ocean properties are never going to convert to this, so why make them part of the discussion to get backlash? I would say that we choose a couple zones.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
I think,
There's no real reason to include the resort beach areas just because it's going to bring out people who will oppose this where it's a hypothetical that's never going to come to pass.
So I hate that idea so much. But
I know.
but you're probably right.
and the thing is that these that are located on like Higgins Beach, Pine Point, down at Proudson, Pine Point, Proudson, those are also neighborhoods up there,
So let me play the advocate for the devil.
Sure.
So let's say, so I don't know the beach areas, like I'm not a beach person. So I'm all about converting on the beach. But so like there's fancy hotels at the beach and fancy places at the beach with fancy restaurants at the beach with people working there. And like, what if one of the places that's big and fancy wants to gobble up one of the small places that maybe isn't so nice and convert it to workforce housing for its workers? Kind of like Sugarloaf was doing with the Herbert Inn up at Sugarloaf. And it's a long shot, obviously, but and to your point, let's not make the perfect the enemy of the adequate, but the opportunity for that to happen is attractive to me, and like the equity of that being able to happen is attractive to me.
Well, unless the economy really tanks. I've got 2 rental units down at Higgins Beach, and I mean, I'm looking into next year already. It's that crazy. And I know that, the inns, the places down along the beach, it's booked out. They really are, and if we had more units, then you'd have more tourists down in those areas. But they're very, it's just the number of units restricts the number of tourists in the area. So, unless, like I said, unless the economy tanks. And I thought with COVID, it was going to, because, I think, well, maybe I'll have a summer that I won't have anybody renting. They were coming out of the woodwork. Oh, yeah.
He wants to get back out.
Yeah, exactly. Get out of that house.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I'd walk before I ran here. If there are definite areas of town zones, zoning districts, I'd go with those, knowing that if expansion seemed the right thing to do after the ordinance has been in place and implemented for a period of time, you can always do that.
Hmm.
So, but
As a counselor, I would agree with that, and I would go back to what Eric said, because, regretfully, you got to look at the politics of it too. And I would rather crawl before we walk, before we run with this. So I can see, because otherwise what we have to go through as a council is we have to go through contract zoning. And that's another, that could be a real nightmare. And you can misuse it or it gets used too much. So what we're looking for is an opportunity to have this opportunity already built into ordinance, so you don't have to go through contract zoning as a use. But I can see limiting it to like down here around Wood area, Route 1 potentially. I don't know, I don't remember what the different zones are along there, but that would certainly be easy to figure out.
All right, so the consensus is then to in the pilot program to limit it to a couple of zones.
Seems like it.
Yeah, all right.
yeah. Yeah, where public transportation already exists, where you're in the centralized areas of town where services that are important to these people that would be difficult to access if you're way down the end of Pine Point. So
Right.
I think that makes sense.
Great, okay. Terrific.
These are the
Who
zones.
wrote the memo? The memo's pretty good.
That was me.
Is that- Yeah, it's good.
It is.
I
a good
did
memo.
like it because
Well, thanks.
it covered
Thanks,
a
Eric,
lot
too.
of the ground that. Yes.
So, yeah, hypothetically, and I know this is a weird old example, but, and this kind of gets back to that proportion question, which we've got an answer for, but it's just a weird example. There was a deal years ago, well, not too many years ago, but a couple of years ago, down at Pine Point, where there was a hotel that was like purchased, knocked down, and I think like turned to condos or something.
Yes.
Which was kind of a change in use.
Mhm.
And just kind of thinking out loud, is the distinction that we're talking about here that, we're talking about kind of an express process, and that type of process might still be able to happen, but or if somebody had a proposal like that, would it feel good to the group for that to be able to happen somewhere else in town?
You mean if they took a further building and knocked it down?
Well, knocked down or miraculously turned it to luxury condos
Oh,
or luxury rental housing, somewhere. So like, let's say, is this the Red Round or Candlewood, what's it called?
Candlewood.
So if miraculously, I don't know how, but like Candlewood turned into like the Beacon Part 2. I don't know how that, not that would happen, but like if it miraculously did, and it was, $3,000 a month to live there, would we feel good about this process being used for that?
No.
Would that be a win?
Process for that. I mean, if the owner decided that they're just gonna knock it down and rebuild it, they don't need to
Right.
go to the zoning board and say, hey, this is what we're gonna do.
Well, let's say it's a rehab. Let's say it's,
Yeah,
so, hey, I want to buy this hotel.
yeah.
And it's a hotel though, but I want to do it as multifamily, the luxury multifamily.
Yeah.
And I want permission to do it, and, here's all the considerations. It's gonna have transportation and a dog park. And it's gonna have solar chargers for the cars and, a picnic table and all these things. And it's gonna be luxury housing for $3,000 a month.
They have to go through contract zoning because it's not allowed in that zone.
Well, but let's say we're using this process that we're talking about though.
Well, that's why I'd like.
But
to
we're
see
not talking
restrictions.
about,
That's why I want to see restrictions on it. If in fact you want to convert, it must be X, Y, and Z. It's not going to be the Beacon. It's not going to be whatever, but that's my opinion.
yeah, I think underlying this is that there has to be a demonstrable public good. And luxury condos does not pass the laugh test of public good. You're talking about affordable and low income and workforce housing as being we are in need of that for the community.
So then, Bill, back to the earlier question, how much of it needs to be that type of housing for it to pass the left test?
Oh, yeah, because there was this whole question about market, that a
Yeah.
project might get proposed. A third is at market rates, a third is at workforce, and a third. Well, of course, that would be the zoning board's decision as to whether the project proposed in its specificity met the test of public good.
Well,
And if it was all, go ahead.
well, if it's ordinance, if you put something into ordinance, then it doesn't go to the zoning board. It would go to the planning board potentially. But the zoning
Well,
board,
don't special,
yeah,
don't
but it wouldn't
special
be, it wouldn't
exceptions,
be, not necessarily, not if it's in the ordinance.
But I was kind of under the impression that a big part of the purpose of this was to
Right,
kind of short circuit the regular process that we go through now.
Yes.
And to be able to say, if I've got an idea that checks these boxes,
right,
as long as I fill out my paperwork right, it's gonna be approved.
right.
It's gotta take a lot of that uncertainty and just
But-
out of it.
I would like to, personally, I mean, if you wanted to put a percentage on it, I would like to see at least 50% of it being in either or affordable and workforce. And then the rest of it could be, but maybe we could give some sort of incentives for them to make it more workforce or whatever, but at least have a baseline.
Yeah, it's not a bad point.
I think that's kind of like so if it's 20 units, do I need to just make one of them?
Right.
The token workforce unit, and then
No, that doesn't.
everything else can
And then
be,
down the road, it is.
and then does that work, Jean Marie?
No,
Do I need 2?
no, I said 50% of the number of
I
units.
need 10, okay.
And I don't mind giving them a bit of market rate because that may be enough of the profit, go into the profit incentive for a developer to do it. Whereas if you're saying, hey, it has to be 100%, there's a lot of developers out there are gonna go, no way in hell. I'm not even touching that without, some sort of incentives, which I don't know, Brian, that's your thing. You and Eric know more about that stuff than I do, the incentives that are out there. My question is though, if you have 50%, can someone get incentives from wherever you guys get incentives from? Or do you have to have more in a project? Tax write-offs, whatever.
Well, in Maine, there's an incentive that's about to run out for workforce
Okay.
housing.
Oh, great.
So by the time we finish our work, it'll be gone. And someday maybe there'll be a workforce housing tax credit, but that's a maybe.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't count on incentives. But I think the
No,
reality,
but my
the
question,
reality is people renting in general are fitting that income range.
Right.
So,
But unless you're a nonprofit, you're not doing it out of the goodness of your heart, so. But anyway, I mean, I think these are all great things that you guys are bringing forward, so.
And, you know, a percentage may seem arbitrary, but Jean Marie makes a point. Sometimes you have to take the dart and throw it at the dartboard. And we all know that developers are not going to do projects if there is not a sufficient motivation to do it, financial motivation. So requiring some but not all, I don't have even a clue of what the right percentage is, but I can see how allowing some market rate opportunities to exist as a part of this special approval.
and I guess maybe a thing to think about is, or I assume, if somebody doesn't go down this pathway, this special magical pathway, they can always do it the old way. Right? I mean, is that right, Jean Marie? That, I mean, this is like the special, easier way, but if somebody didn't fit this bill or didn't like this, they could always still try.
For a contract
For
zone,
a contract zone.
yeah,
There's no hope to take
Right.
that off the table, right?
right.
Okay.
We're just looking to make it easier if possible, or, you know, we want to be able to try it. It doesn't hurt to try. You know, I mean, something's got to
Yeah.
happen. Geez, I'm crow. I mean, I see it every day in my business. You know, it's ridiculous that people don't have places to live.
So 50% on the table so far, from what I can tell. I also think that, as I said at the last meeting, I think the market's going to dictate this. So, you know, if a Candlewood converts to affordable or workforce or both, and they want to put a few market rate units in there, that I'm okay with that. I'm not certain that they'll be considered luxury unless they take like the top floor and make it some sort of a couple of, you know, luxury upper units or something. But I think market is still going to be relative to Beacon or relative to others, is still going to be sort of in the middle. It may be above 120, but it's not going to be 200% of AMI. So I think the market's going to dictate what the rents can be at places like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not opposed to 50. I mean, that's in our world, or at least for Avesta, 50 would be high. I mean, we don't see much more than, you know, sometimes 10 or 15 or 20%, because of the programs that we're trying to achieve funding from. But if for a deal to pencil out, if it has to be upwards of 50, I guess so be it in these zones.
So if we were to say no more than half of the units ought to be unrestricted?
Yeah, for better or worse, I think there's a consensus around that, for better or worse.
Yeah, but if you're looking at, you know, these guys coming in and converting it, and 50% of it is, you know, below market rate, I mean, they're not gonna make any money. No, they won't. The minimum they're not making.
Well, and you've got to remember the size. You've got to remember the size of these places too, because I'm remembering Candlewood was, I want to say 90 units.
The reality, at least for the first time going through all this, is it's all going to translate into sales price.
Right,
So,
right.
So the more you allow, the more market rate we allow, the more these existing buildings are gonna be worth, and the more the current owners are gonna get the sales proceeds. And the more restricted it is, the less.
True.
And the thought is, these are businesses that aren't working. So it's a bit of a windfall for these existing businesses to take something that's not working and turn it into something that could.
I mean, you have three tiers. You have three tiers of housing, market, workforce, and affordable. The developer would always want to be able to convert to market, because then they're not subject to any restrictions, any financial salary restrictions, wage restrictions. So if everyone's moving away, if it's 50% market and 50% workforce, maybe we end up with no affordable housing being added. So it's like Rocky got stuck with a 10% factor at the Downs. That was 10% affordable housing.
Right.
And maybe we have bookends. We have up to 50% can be market rate housing. 10% has to be affordable housing. Now, at least we've introduced some affordable housing into it, but we've given some flexibility to the developer by allowing the profit framework of the deal to include some market rate units.
How does that resonate with people?
Also a great idea.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, at least it gives you something to bring to the council. God only knows what the council will do with it, but if I've got anything to say about it, they'll take it, but you know.
Well, the hardest thing to sell is affordable housing.
No, I
Those are the
know.
low income people. And that's the tough situation. That's Jean Marie's comment about everybody deserves a roof over their head. And those are the people most likely to be exposed to not having a roof over their head. So giving them a little bump in this deal seems to me to be fair play.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, right, so Eric, you can get that into the minutes, minimum of 10% affordable. And then no more than 50% unrestricted.
Mhm.
And that ought to be part of the evaluation. Great,
And then it's up to the developers to work with that.
yeah.
Do we want to do the zone?
Yeah, and then does this have a, so it's B2, B3, and TVC3. Great,
Yep.
awesome.
Brian, can you repeat those?
B2, B3, and TVC3.
TVC3.
Yep.
Bingo.
Great, we're in business.
Good. So that's Payne Road and that's Route 1 and Payne Road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
And otherwise, I think I like the memo the way it is.
Yeah, I do too.
Nice job.
Great.
Yeah.
That's okay with the font? You want a different font?
Maybe you should double space.
Double stay, all right.
Remember back in
All right.
high school?
All right. Eric, if you can get the minutes, even, before we approve them or anything, that'll be, helpful just so we can update the memo. And for people to add any extra thoughts, even if you have them kind of offline. And I'll recirculate a version of this to folks with attachments, and we can kind of do a little email conversation about that, and we should be good to go.
Sounds good.
Yeah, this is very, I think this is very good.
Yeah, I do too. I'm very appreciative of the fact that well, not that I didn't think you'd get behind this, but I think the more we can do, and I'm looking in my oh, wait a minute, I'm gonna forward you guys. Well, I'm gonna forward it to Brian, and Brian, if you can get it out to the others. I went to it was a phone call Zoom thing on housing in Portland and homeless. It was more around homelessness, but I learned some interesting facts I didn't know. And Eric and Brian, you may be more knowledgeable on this, but it just talks about percentages of population and who's homeless and how it breaks down and whatever. So if you don't mind, I'll send it to Brian. Is that all right, Brian?
Oh, that's terrific, yeah. Or Jean Marie, I think, I think there's an email address called Housing Alliance, or send it to me, I'll forward it out to the group, but
Yeah, well, that'd be great. Because I just thought, oh my God, I didn't know this.
yeah, that'll be interesting for folks. Thank you.
It was from, what's his name? Brian Cullen or Cullen, am I getting his?
Colin Ryan.
Yes, it was very interesting.
Brian, I heard your request about the minutes. I am out on vacation, so it'll have to be the week of July 11th. Is that okay?
Yeah, would you mind just shooting me a quick email with some like salient memories from tonight's meeting so I could,
Yeah, I'll send you the key points from the
yeah,
that need to get entered into the memo.
yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you. But yeah, July 11th is great. Terrific. There's only one more thing on the agenda. It starts with an A and ends with- Unless anybody
I
else
so
has something they
move.
want to add.
So
You
move.
All right,
Second.
great.
And Brian, I just sent that to you. Hopefully.
Awesome. And just for the record, there's no attendees other than us tonight, so
Oh, okay.
public is watching to join. So. Great. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
Good job, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great job, everybody. All right, I'm gonna end the meeting. See ya.
Easy breezy. All I've had is meetings all.
All day, yeah. Oh, jeez.
Well, except for the grandson's basketball